All right, boys and girls. So today we're coming back. Good morning or good afternoon, whichever when you're getting this assignment. We are coming back with our monsters that we created last week. And we talked about last week one of our elements of art. Or actually a few of our elements of art. We talked about lines and how we use the lines to create our monster. We talked about adding lines to create texture. And we talked about value, which is the different shades of a color, and we came in our background and we created this area back here, which is our background, with value using from light to dark. So we are going to continue with our monsters this week, and we're going to create actual texture using something underneath our papers to create texture when we're rubbing it on here. So I'm going to be using a texture plate and some crayons, and a lot of times we like these brand new crayons. I love these, but today we're actually going to use those crayons that we don't like to use as much, the broken, the ones that have no wrappers. We're going to be using these because these are perfect for doing these rubbings and creating that texture. Now I know that we don't have these at home, but you might have other objects that have a texture on them, which is really just something rough that you can put underneath. I, for example, went to Dollar Tree and I saw these and I was like, wow, that would create some texture on a piece of paper. And so here's one. It's just a paper doily, but you can find other items. You can find a rock or a sidewalk, or if you have a binder or something that you have that has some kind of texture on it where it's like more rough and you can see something through it, that would work perfectly. So you're going to take your item that you have texture on and you're gonna lay your monster on top of it when you're ready. Now you could take a scrap paper and test it first to see if you like that color or like that texture, because I don't want you to put it on your monster and then you're like, oh, I don't like that. So get a paper and test it out. So here I'm even testing it out and I can see what my texture is going to look like. Notice my crayon is being very lazy today. He was not up to the job. He did not want to work today, so he decided he's going to do this laying down. So you're going to lay your crayon down on your paper, and I'm going to grab it. And remember, I'm not holding it like this in my hand today, boys and girls. Today it's going to lay on your paper, and you're going to actually just rub it. Okay, and you can see here, see, this is where the doily's not at, and it's smooth. But here, look at this texture that I'm creating because of this right here underneath. So if you're using something like this where there's no texture on the inside, you might want to even move it around so that you can get that nice texture in your artwork. So the same thing goes for this plate that I have, and you can make your own textures. You can take a net and you can put it over a piece of cardboard, but see, I'm going to use texture with my rubbing. So you just need to create something. If you don't have it, that's okay, boys and girls. You can still color your monster and not have to worry about this. But if you can make something with texture, let's try to do that. Be creative. Okay, so I have my monster now back over here, and I have a texture plate underneath my monster. So I'm going to be using some of my crayons that have no wrappers so that I can really get in there and not have to be trying to work around my wrapper in the way. Remember, your crayon, you can use it lazy. I like when they're smaller actually, because then I can get in smaller spaces, but we want to also make sure that we're coloring neatly so that we're not getting our colors in areas that we don't want. So I'm going to start off by taking that texture and creating my horns here, and I'm pressing down so that I can get the color on there. And I'm gonna come over here and you don't have to put texture everywhere. You could maybe find certain areas. I'm trying to show you guys what I'm doing in this, So I am gonna probably put texture in most of my areas, but you don't have to have texture everywhere. So if you decide in the horns, I don't wanna put it underneath there, that's fine. I do wanna see it maybe in the body of your monster. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna continue coloring. Remember, I like to turn my paper so that it fits me and I don't have to move my arms and my body to color my picture. It should be more convenient for you. Again, I'm pressing down over the texture. I do not have my hand up like this. I actually have the crayon laying down and I'm rubbing gently but also hard so that you can see the color and see the texture. So I'm gonna continue to do this while I'm coloring my monster and come back to you once I have a little bit more color on my monster. Notice, boys and girls, I am taking like another shade of a little bit darker, and I'm using actually 2 colors in here just to give my horns a little bit more color to it and value so that it really stands out instead of just being one single color and flat. So I'm trying to add some shape to my horns. Here I am adding a little bit more value with my hair. I didn't use my naked crayons on here. I used my wrapped crayons, but I actually took and used my yellow green to color the hair, but then came back in and blended in with a little bit of my regular green and to add some value. So I'm really trying to focus on that word in here, boys and girls, of using value to show some different shades of the same color or similar colors that are next to each other, but not, because I don't want to use purple and green together in the hair because that would not be showing value. That's showing 2 different colors on the spectrum. So right now I'm focusing on value like we did in our background and also trying to use it in our monster. All right, boys and girls, so you can see here I've added a lot of color, a lot of texture. I'm still using just the same plate underneath. I'm just switching. I've added some value, like darker pink here and a lighter pink here. I have added some darker blue and lighter blue, but I am gonna go back in with my black and add some shadow. I still haven't colored my monster, but when I go into color, I have my crayon, and like I said, I was saying earlier that you could use the crayons and just rub them. That works too really well. I do sometimes change up how I'm coloring on it. I do have the texture plate underneath, but I'm gonna put it underneath. I don't wanna just scribble over because I wanna make sure that I leave these eyes. I don't wanna color through the black. I don't wanna color through the mouth because it really does make it look messy when we do that, and it takes away from that black that we're trying to use. So I'm showing you 2 different ways. I do like using the lazy crayons because sometimes kids have a hard time getting the texture onto their paper and don't know why it's not working. So you can try it that way, or you can use it where you use the crayon and you're coloring over a really good texture. If the texture's not as defined, it won't come through the paper as well. That's why I say lay it down and press down. But here you can see my texture is coming through, but I'm not coloring through my areas that I want to remain black or another color because it will make it look messy and ruin your color. So we want to make sure that we're coloring neatly, but staying inside the lines and not leaving any white space that you don't want. Like, I know I want this white, so I'm going to leave that white, but I don't want to leave white in my coloring because I forget to do it. So I'm going to make sure that I color all of it. All right, boys and girls, so now I've finished coloring. You can see all the texture that I've put in here just using this, but like I said, you don't have to. I am trying to find some texture in your artwork. So now I'm actually grabbing a black and a white crayon. And the reason is because if you can see here on this horn, I have gone in and I've added some light and some shadow in it. So that way it really does change the shape of my horns and my body because it's making it look more like it's round instead of just flat. And I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna add areas where I think there should be light. And I'm doing it on the outside here and creating my white, like light is shining on it because it's on the outside. But I'm gonna do in areas where something is, and see, you can see that it's a little bit lighter. Black is a very, like you can tell here, is a very powerful color, and I don't want to color too dark. So when I'm doing this, I barely want to touch my black down, barely touch, because I'm just trying to add a little bit of shadow on there. See? And I'm barely touching my paper, but it still works where I'm kind of creating that darker areas where shadow might be hitting. Because my hair is here, I am going to add a little bit underneath because it's kind of making where it's on top of it, preventing the light from hitting. So I'm just following the lines, and look, you can see I'm barely touching it, but it's there, creating some shadow. And I can add a little bit of light in there too on the top where my hair is at. I'm also going to add some kind of light in here. You can't see it as well, but there I'm just adding it on. I'm going to add a little bit under his mouth. Like I said, I am barely, I even have it turned to the side so I don't press down too hard. I'm trying to blend it in with those colors. I'm going to add it underneath the arms because when we have our light, it's blocking the light. So we're going to create some shadow there. But I'm going to go in and add some light on the top of the arm here. Same thing on this side. I'm going to add some light. But I'm going to come on the underneath and I'm going to add a little bit of shadow. I'm just kind of changing the looks of our character here so that way he looks a little bit more 3D instead of just flat on paper. Again, I'm going to add it underneath here where his body's kind of creating a shadow over his legs. I'm going to do it between the toes, on the bottom side of his foot. I'm going to create some light on top of his foot. And so you have hopefully added some shadow and light to your monster and created color. And if you want to frame it or put it on matting, you can do that. And I would love to see your artwork up hanging in the hallways. So when you do get done with your monster art, if you would drop it off at the school, I've put a bucket, a monster bucket, in the front security lobby for you just to come in and drop it off. Make sure, boys and girls, that on the back of your paper, do not use a marker to do this, but I'm gonna write my name. And I'm gonna write my grade level. So if I'm in 3rd grade, I'm gonna write 3. And I'm also gonna write my teacher's name. So whoever that is, and you're gonna put it in the box in the front. Bye, boys and girls.